Ethan and Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. I can't believe that.
You know, Ethan, this is a milestone episode of Americans Watching the Footy. Why? We finally have the same number of episodes as there are Generation 1 Pokemon. Cool. In that case, welcome to the Mew episode. I'm Benjamin Castle alongside my aforementioned brother Ethan.
Sure, welcome. I can't tell you all that much about Pokemon stuff, but that is cool.
Yeah, so welcome to the opening round recap. It still doesn't feel right to say opening round, does it?
No, but I will say, all 4 games sold out. We had a thrilling finish. We had some good trolling. We had another game that was tight until the fourth quarter. I was entertained. And while I still do think that, it's cool to have the Carlton-Richmond opener, I would like to see maybe not, just a few of the teams opening the season. Although some of that also could have been necessitated by when Anzac Day is this year, like King's birthday and stuff. But I would like to see more of this where they really promote season openers and just encourage fans to show up. I think that's good. And if we can just do that more, whether they do it as a formal opening round or not, that would be great.
We had 40,000 at the SCG, which they've only had 13 times for the AFL,
which is kind of wild.
Considering the success that the Swans have had. Maybe part of that is because they had a time where they played a lot of finals at the Olympic Stadium.
Still, it's tough to believe.
Well, for the self-professed largest fan base and being the dominant team in the most populous city and state, you would expect better crowds. But a performance like the Swans put on, especially in the second half, ought to draw more people in. Sydney 12-14-86, defeating Melbourne 9-10-64. The night began with their 150th anniversary celebration, and it ended with Brodie Grundy saying, "Wowee."
Yeah. He ended up totally outplaying Max Gawn, and it was a reminder that Grundy is still a good player, and we just, maybe we forgot because it wasn't the right fit for him at Melbourne. I don't know if he holds any contempt for them. I think it might just be more, it wasn't the right place for him to go because he's not a backup at this stage of his career.
It's not just that he's not a backup. He's not a ruck forward. He is a ruck. And so is Max Gawn.
Whereas maybe, say, I don't know, Todd Goldstein could possibly do some of that, or maybe Reece Stanley in a couple of years. I guess Goldstein, now I think about it, sounds a little sillier, but
I'm thinking more how about somebody else who used to play at Melbourne, Luke Jackson. You want to talk ruck?
Well, yeah, that's what it was to begin with.
Yeah, Grundy is not that. They were trying to shoehorn him into a position that didn't work for him. The only time Grundy really had good moments in red and blue last year was when Gawn was out early in the season. But Grundy also took advantage of the greater lenience that ruckmen now have because you don't get freeze anymore for putting out straight arms to try to block as long as you're still contesting the ball. So Grundy just immediately got front position on Gawn. Wasn't even looking at where the ball was actually going a lot of the time. Just got in front of Gawn and contested the hit out from there, and it worked really well.
So, honestly, the first half of this game was ass, and if it had kept up like that, I would have said, this is stupid, let's never do opening round again. Third quarter was great back and forth, and then Sydney pulled away in the fourth.
After some shaky accuracy in the match sims of the community series, Bailey Fritsch was a big reason why the Demons were able to draw back into the game in the third quarter. He kicked 3 then.
He kicked 1 more in garbage time, so not quite a real 4-goal game, but
I think some of the broadcasters were arguing whether 4 goals counts as a bag these days. when you get a fourth like that, that's not a bag.
5 is a bag. 4 is not a bag. I think Mason and Braden have had this discussion. I feel like 4 could only be a bag if the game's like slugfest played in the 40s or something.
Oh, you mean Cairns?
Pretty much, yeah. Speaking of Cairns, it was really humid for this game, and it meant a lot of drop balls and stuff. 87%. That sounds not fun.
And that was the live reading at halftime.
So that probably partially contributed to why the first half was so bad.
Yeah, it did dry up a bit in the second half, and the ball handling improved from there. With Luke Parker and Taylor Adams out for the Swans, we were wondering, is Errol Golden going to get more time on the inside? Are we going to see a more magnified role for James Jordan right away? Turned out it was just, no, Isaac Heaney actually playing in the midfield pretty much full time. And he emerged as best on ground thanks to his efforts in the second half, finishing 1-1 from 26 disposals, 13 clearances, 12 score involvements, 7 tackles, and 619 meters. The complete game that we know he's always capable of, but he's typically cast a bit too far downfield to really have that sort of all-around performance. Now it's a matter of figuring out how to balance his time in the midfield still once the others get back. I think that will involve probably Adams taking more of a center half forward role, and I guess keeping Golden out there on the wing, having him kind of be one of the first guys that gets fed out off of stoppages, whether it might be by Heaney or James Rowbottom. It was Grundy himself who created more of the clearances in this one, though had 9 of them himself. And as good as his pure tap work was, his follow-up was just as strong.
I also felt validated because the thing that I've said many times happened again, where Nick Blakey got on a couple of long runs and led to goals. And I think just when you are playing the Swans, the most important thing you have to do in terms of altering your game plan to fit what they're doing is you've got to make sure to contain Blakey, because if he gets on a big run, you're in deep shit.
You don't usually see defenders get that sort of one-on-one attention like that, even ball-moving defenders, but he'd be a type where it would make sense. I would say, if you're playing North, do the same thing against Harry Sheasel.
I think Blakey, just in particular, those like lizard runs, you really see a lot of. Also, Hayden McLean had some awful misses early and then had kind of his own little redemption arc.
That was satisfying. He was my sleeper last year, and I've developed a bit of a soft spot for him as a result. When we were talking about, defenders getting that one-on-one attention, the Swans decided to do that to Jake Lever. They swung Robbie Fox forward, and it actually kind of worked. Lever wasn't able to shake off of Fox that easily, wasn't able to get to as many one-on-ones. Sure got, some decent intercept numbers, but when Lever's usually the one able to support Stephen May and whoever else, and you're able to cut him off like that, then you tend to see your scoring average against the Demons increase a bit. And I think that'll be something that's replicated. Maybe it's swinging a defender forward. Maybe it's just having one of your present talls just constantly stay on him. It reminds me of what the Saints did last year, trying to limit James Sicily by putting, I believe it was Cooper Sharman on him. And we said then, why don't more teams do this? I think John Longmire's already learned.
Lever got off to a really nice start and then kind of looked human after that.
Fox made him look human.
Yeah. Jack Viney, I think, was easily Melbourne's best. Could argue him as the most consistent performer throughout the night. Really liked his game. Also, moving Christian Salem up to a midfield role seems to be going all right so far. This was not like, throw away everything from this game for the D's. They had some positives to build off of, including that.
Yeah, Salem getting 15 contested possessions and gaining over half of a kilometer in his midfield role. I think more of the question was, is the backline still going to be all right without Salem there? And if Blake Howes can keep putting up double-digit intercept games, then I think the answer is yes. Howes can go anywhere from the fullback to the wing, but it seems like fullback's the right spot for him based on this first action in the opening round and also based on the preseason. It also allows Judd McVie to venture a bit further downfield, which can cut off some smaller one-on-ones at the source. Didn't see much of that cut off in this game, but that'll benefit them sooner rather than later. I could see it even on someone like Caleb Daniel as early as next round when the D's played the Dogs for the third straight year in round 1.
Caleb Windsor looked pretty good in debut, other than he had like one or two of the ball handling issues that everyone else did. He didn't seem too jittery. I liked his game. Yeah, this is a team that looked like they were probably one Kazi Pickett and one Harrison Petty away from being able to win this game, even without their best midfield performance. Not having that small goal sneak to create chaos in the forward 50 was very noticeable. And defensively, I think Petty probably would have helped some against the likes of Hayward and McLean as the game went on.
I wonder if they were also one Joel Smith and one bag of Coke short.
How big's that?
Well, a bag's 5 goals, you said.
Okay, but how big is this bag?
Enough to make OT Genesis in love with it.
I'm in love with the coco.
The run-happy Smalls from the Swans did their jobs as normaling into the forward 50. Still going to take a bit to get used to Chad Warner's, buzz cut, because these past few years we were able to identify him pretty quickly by just seeing his blonde curls running around. He did well going from the midfield, some of those center bounce attendances, and Tom Papley was in on some of those as well. I was disappointed that the camera cut away to fans before his celebration, because whenever you see Papley scoring, you just expect to see that reaction, and we were kind of cock-blocked from it.
He is very high on the list of players you would really love if they were on your team.
I feel like we go over this almost every time we talk about Tom Papley. And then, starting a bit further deep, Will Hayward also had a very strong second half. I know some of the commentators were very keen on his play. Often finds himself a bit more at the end of chains, but had one goal in the late third and then another one in the early fourth to really help break the game open for the Swans. The big injury news out of this one is Jake Bowie. He broke his collarbone in the first half and has been ruled out for 8 weeks. So definitely does put some more weight there on Judd McVie. I thought McVie was pretty good. I thought he was just one of their more noticeable players in general, being around the ball. And with Bowie being slider or frame, it's going to be tougher for him to certain forwards in the first place. So how the D's are going to plug that gap will be interesting. Do they decide to slide Howes further up and maybe give Marty Hoare a chance in the very back? That's going to be a tough call there. Again, this is a spot where Joel Smith could really help.
Brisbane 12-13-85, defeated by Carlton 13-8-86.
After not losing at the Gabba all last year, the Lions get surprised by a huge band of Blues Brothers, which is like peak lawful good fan support on Carlton's part, and also a great game out of both of the Coleman medalists for the Blues. You think back to when Carlton had played Brisbane last year, both meetings, Charlie Curnow had gotten shut down one-on-one. Jack Payne had the assignment on Friday night, as he did in round 8 last year, and Curnow shook free of him and just soundly beat him in that matchup all night. And then Mackay ended up being the hero, had one poor kick in the second quarter, but kicked 3-1, including the game winner, was there in the backup ruck and was just present as a mark throughout the ground as well. He had 7 of them, and I think they were all felt.
Yeah, high impact in short windows. So the way this game kind of carried out, I had said at one point pretty early that if every opening round went with Carlton getting smashed like this, I'm all for it. And then they unfortunately stopped getting smashed. And they turned things around after getting down 59-13 midway through the second. A lead that could have been bigger, but Charlie Cameron's accuracy was an issue, which Brisbane forward accuracy was really the biggest reason they won this thing. Brisbane's forward inaccuracy was the main reason they lost this thing. And it's weird to say that from the game where they still managed to score 85 and kick 12-13, but you had a few bad misses. Again, Cameron, even Lincoln McCarthy, who I thought had a really nice game, one of his more noticeable games, had a couple, finished 2-3. And it was that a lot of the misses came at really critical junctures when Carlton was starting to come back. Like, whenever you felt that sort of like next goal wins feeling, they would have a chance and then they'd probably miss.
And this was a game that really was Brisbane's for the taking just from the outset with the undermanned Blues defense. Lewis Young and Brody Kemp were not up to snuff to take on the plethora of Lions talls, which at times also included Darcy Gardner going up forward, which is kind of strange. But Joe Danaher punked them. Eric Hipwood had one early, which meant we did get to hear Runaway. But we also heard Runaway again when we weren't supposed to.
Yeah, they were a little premature.
Yeah, so this was approaching the middle of the third quarter. Himwood had missed a longer shot, and the PA just started playing runaway. You heard it as the Blues were getting in position for the kick-in, and it was at that moment, even when it was still 61-58 Lions, that I said, well, the Blues are winning this.
Yeah, teams never win after shit like that, feels like. It's, now that I think about it, how did Washington State not catch that Hail Mary at Cal after the premature cannon?
Oh, man, that's a throwback
To, like, a few months ago.
Oh, wait, I think Cal's done it multiple times then.
No, this was in, like, November.
Oh, okay. That one. I feel like there's, like, been another premature cannon incident at Cal, so...
No, because that was, like, during the final play.
Oh, right. Anyway, Bluegrass Miracle, firing off fireworks from the scoreboard while the play's still going on.
Yes.
If you don't know about the Bluegrass Miracle, Australians,
One of the greatest endings to a football game ever, if not the greatest.
one of the greatest college football endings you'll ever see, including a premature Gatorade bath. Unfortunately, this Lions-Blues game was marred by 2 ACL injuries.
Both to players we like.
Yeah, both in the first half. Both Kadeen Coleman and Sam Doherty. And for Doherty, it's his right knee this time and tore his meniscus as well. The previous 2 ACLs had been on the left. He can't catch a break. I think he's finally going to have another complete season after returning from cancer and having battled through injury the previous year. Things looking up. He's going to have a big part to play in the back of fuck. What that did allow for on the positive side was a really strong sub-performance at third quarter in particular from Jack Carroll.
You want to talk about a guy who really helped make the comeback happen? And as much as I don't like Carlton, give him a lot of credit with all the pieces they were missing for this game, that they were able to stay in it and ultimately win. Rarely would you think a sub activated at halftime you could consider for votes, but he didn't get any coaches' votes, but he certainly put up a performance that I'm sure at the very least there was some thought to mentioning him there.
I mean, probably best on ground in the third quarter. 6 disposals, 3 clearances, and his first AFL goal in that frame alone. A 21-year-old midfielder from Geraldton, of all places. They mentioned on the broadcast, and I hadn't really thought about it, Carroll was able to step into somewhat of a spot that Paddy Dow had been in previously, right off of ball ups, and being able to have some of that burst into the forward 50, something that you would expect out of someone like Sam Walsh. And perhaps when they let Paddy Dow go to the Saints, Blues staff had been thinking all along, oh, we've got Carroll who can probably emerge into a similar role. Especially now with Doherty's injury maybe opening up some shuffling around in the best 22. I think Carroll may very well have just played himself into a starting spot, no longer being the sub.
As for Kadeen Coleman, I thought he was excellent in the first half, and then right before halftime, I thought it was just like a hyperextended knee or something, and then it ended up being an ACL as well. And he was kind of doing that wing roll, really moving the ball well between kind of, I'd say towards midfield, like usually just before midfield, but he was...
I mean, that's very typical of Coleman, and you could tell that they were missing some of that punch in terms of strong kicks from half back in the second half, between not having Coleman after having him in the first half and also not having Connor McKenna there. And they also didn't put in Jimmy Madden or Jackson Pryor into the 22 to offset that. I'd imagine one of those two would get a shot alongside McKenna now in order to try and make up for Coleman's absence.
Chris Fagan had mentioned positional versatility pregame, and they did some of that between throwing Dane Zorko and Darcy Gardner around. But I think just they lose some of that with Coleman getting hurt, which it's a big blow.
And also, they waited too long into the second half to move things around, to bring Gardner back onto Charlie Curnow instead of Jack Payne, for example. It was probably a goal or two too late for them to do that.
I will say this. You know what really sucks about a guy getting hurt in round 1?
It's not even round 1.
It's just in March. If a guy gets hurt in the preseason, it sucks, but at least you have time to figure it out. You can test some stuff out. If a guy gets hurt in, like December or January, at this point, you lose that luxury and you've got to figure out a lot more in-game instead of all that time you have with practice and match simulation stuff. So it's
a substantial setback. Yeah. For any player in your best 22, especially one of Coleman's caliber.
and one that's not exactly one you can directly replace. Yeah, it's not like they just have a lesser version of him unless they were to pull up his brother or something. And even that, I think, different skill sets.
Yeah, think about Cameron versus Zach Guthrie.
It's significant and it sucks. He's one of my favorite Lions to watch. I think Cam Rayner still takes that award, but he's up there.
For me, as I've said, it's Zach Bailey, who apparently has a better goal gift now, or worse, depending on how you think about it. No, like vaudeville level gritty.
I kind of prefer it. I kind of don't.
Maybe we just need to bring it back when he scores. Maybe we need to just find that clip and make it our thing. But
it would be easy enough.
Yeah. I want to keep the focus, though, on some of the defense. We've talked about how it took Fagan too long to switch Gardner onto Charlie Curnow. In terms of good defenders for the Lions, I think we had a very clear top defender for Brisbane, that being Brandon Starcevich, who, I'll just say it, Brandon Starcevich is bald.
All right.
It will take a while to adjust to that one. And really, he was the damage control guy in the defensive 50. And they're one good defender when the Blues started getting back into the game with their 7-goal third quarter. Meanwhile, on Carlton's end, their backs weren't nearly physical enough in the first quarter. They got closer to their assignments from then on. Great battle between Adam Saad, and Charlie Cameron all night. I guess because of Cameron's inaccuracy, Saad got the better of that matchup. And then,
I mean, earlier in the game, I thought Cameron had him. I don't know if you can really credit inaccuracy to the defender unless he's like forcing the forward into low percentage areas, which isn't what happened here. Cameron got the shots he wanted, just didn't make it up him.
But in terms of Carlton's best defender, I know where you're going to go for this one, Ethan, and you were championing him from like really the moment that he started having his impact on Friday night.
Yeah, they had to dig deep. This is a team where depth has been in question. David Cunningham, I thought, both in a defensive role and a ball-moving role, was nothing short of amazing.
And did the coaches reward him with votes?
Nope. But I think that's because he only had 12 touches. It was just every time he had the ball, it was a high-impact possession. It seemed like high leverage.
Part of a couple scoring chains, good pressure as well. I believe he scored a goal himself, maybe in the second quarter as well, and just had a good defensive roving job. He's not a one-on-one defender, but he didn't need to be. He played his job well. And before we take a break here, I also want to credit Ollie Hollins, because we already know what he'd been able to do from halfback and from the wing, but he'd gone more into the midfield to start this season, really connecting with his brother Elijah there. I think it's going to be great to see Elijah playing alongside Cripps and maybe Carroll there in the midfield.
Yes, I would also label Hollins as one of the more positively noticeable players.
Well, Ollie Hollins started off well in the midfield, but then when Doherty went out, Hollins slid back at times and really started to occupy that ball-moving halfback role that Doherty has done so well when he's been healthy for years. And it ended up being surprisingly like for like. So I think Ollie Hollins is going to be really the key to the halfback and midfield connection for the Blues this year. Maybe not how Michael Voss drew it up, trying to get him just purely in that center line, but as a matter of circumstance, I think Ollie's going to be that key cog there, and I think he's the right man for that job.
Also want to mention a couple of the big-time midfielders, Josh Dunkley and Patrick Cripps. I was surprised Dunkley got 3 coaches' votes because I didn't think he was very effective at all, and I thought Cripps did a good job in limiting him. Cripps had 23 disposals to Dunkley's 21 and a goal, but it was also just like most of Dunkley's ended up not leading to anything. He was just, Cripps made him just more there than an actual really like impactful player. And Chris, I'd use the word impact a lot tonight, but I think it's appropriate here, and I can't come up with any other words, so we're just going to roll with it.
Well, relevant, I think, is like too much of a downgrade from impactful. So I get it. And also, Cripps swung forward in the whole shuffle after Doherty went down and still managed to get 23. So I know that there was a decent amount of love for Cripps there. I imagine he'll pick up a vote somewhere for this game. Just surprised with just how this game started, how one-sided it was, that the final 54 minutes of time on were within a goal. The final minute, by the way, after the Mackay go-ahead goal, Brisbane got into the forward 50, but never really was able to do much of anything with it. Carlton were able to force a bunch of stoppages and just did a good job bleeding out that final minute. Yeah, and Mackay actually had a really important play there as well. I forget who it was that kicked it toward the boundary, but Mackay got there and I think got his hand on the ball to prevent a deliberate. Not the type of play that you typically see a forward making, as if his best on-ground performance wasn't already cemented. I think just that game-saving play probably sealed it. I hope that gets some recognition.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
And welcome back to Americans Watching the Footy. I'm Ethan Castle. I am Benjamin Castle. We're on Twitter at Americans Footy, also Instagram, also YouTube. My personal Twitter is Castle Media. Mine is Benjamin HK01. But more importantly than that, Ethan's got a cat. His name is Brian. His middle name is Harambe. Named him after the two bravest people I know. If I was going with other brave people, it would have been Squidward, Channing Tatum. Brian is on Instagram at catnamedGrind. He's been chilling underneath Ethan's bed for most of this recording session. Been really fun just kind of getting back into the flow of things, footy-wise, live reacting, and just getting into conversations in response to our posts and other people's online. It just, I don't know, it feels normal again. We're back. How good's the footy? And how good might the Gold Coast Suns be? Are we allowed to say that?
The mighty Sun.
I'm not going to overreact to one game. No, especially with how much Richmond was missing. Yeah, but a very cathartic win for Damien Hardwick and company, and the Dustin Martin cutout wearing a full Suns uniform. Aside from Shea Bolton getting the first goal on pretty nice shot at a tough angle, because that's just what he does. I think it was on the run, right? Yeah. I mean, aside from that and Sam Naismith getting through the game uninjured, Naismith. Aside from him getting through the game uninjured, I mean, there wasn't much else positive to be found for the Tigers, who fell 99-60. Gold Coast 14-15 to Richmond 9-6. 74-13 at half, which was the largest halftime lead in the Suns' history, which seems kind of hard to believe. It was 74-7 after 11 straight goals. A lot of Ben King, he kicked 5. Really solid game as well out of Mal Roses, who kicked 3, only 13 touches, but so fun to watch. Yes, high leverage touches, really smart ball use in the forward half. And remember, they were not sure if he was going to be playing this week. He had to pass some tests on his quad, and fair to say he passed them. Roses is very high on my list of players that are decent, but I will value higher than their actual output because they're just fun. He is a fun forward to watch. He is also high on the list of players who are likely to kill Geelong this year, because where is he from? Regional Victoria. Remember, Ethan, where do the Suns play the Cats this year? Shit. Right. Yeah, the first time I really took notice of Roses was for his performances in Darwin in 2022. And I think he's primed to have a big day against the Cats and just really show out up there in the Northern Territory again. I feel very validated in terms of the players that I really said to watch this first round for the Suns, with Roses playing well, Connor Butterick reasserting himself on the halfback flank, being that next guy in the chain often after Will Powell, who was probably the best defender on ground, especially in the bookend quarters. Super active in the first, more on the outside starting movement. I believe 11 of his 28 disposals were in the first. And then 11 intercepts and 9 marks overall. Had a couple really important ones, more on the inside when the Tigers were starting to get a feel for the game again in the fourth quarter. I remember one where he was lunging out while still on the ground to stop a chain where I believe Bolton was involved.
Yeah, I didn't notice Powell as much, but I also wasn't watching this game in real time, what with state basketball championships and stuff. So I'm going to defer that to you. I will say I did notice King, and I definitely noticed Matt Rowell. 33 disposals, 26 possessions, 20 fucking clearances, 9 score involvements.
Rowell's 20 clearances are the second most ever recorded. Paul Salmon, the only one to have more, and that's a ruckman right there, just having a dominant performance from back in 98. So for a midfielder to get 20 clearances is off the charts in so many ways. He has become one with the ground from his grass consumption, and with him just continuing to be this immediate on-ball beast, it frees up Tuke Miller and Noah Anderson to do whatever the hell they please.
Question,
Answer?
and because I don't quite have the perspective to like the early part of his run at Richmond, but has Damien Hardwick ever had just like a top elite young midfielder like this?
I mean, a pure midfielder, maybe not, because even at the beginning, Dusty showed that forward ability.
Exactly, yeah. Someone who's lining up, right at center, in on center bounces, that sort of stuff. I don't think he's ever had one of this caliber, and I did think from the start, and I hope in an older episode I said it so I could sound even smarter, because I already sound pretty smart, but I thought maybe Hardwick could unlock something in Rowell. I thought that could have been a good fit. And that's the one thing that I will absolutely overreact to out of this game, is that he looked awesome. And I think there is some real substance there for what he can do moving forward and what he's going to do under Hardwick. There were times when he was a tagger, which, yeah, he was good at it, but he's also really good at other stuff. I'm sure there are a lot of top midfielders that would also be good taggers. I'm sure Lachie Neal, if he was asked to be a tagger, would be pretty good at it.
We've seen Tuke Miller be an excellent tagger on Lachie Neal.
But why would you put those guys in those roles when they can just be really good midfielders? Why would you shoehorn them into a specialized spot?
That's a really matchup dependent one that we've already seen it work for Miller. Makes me think that Hardwick might pull that move for himself, especially with Anderson's rise as well. And then you could throw Brady Fiorini into more of an inside role too. Fiorini had his chances kind of toward the back part of chains, and then also on the outside. Made the most of his forward chances as well, kicking 2 goals from 8 marks. Really pleased with Fiorini when I'd really thought that he maybe had overstayed his welcome in the past, really was just kind of that next guy up who, with the emergence of the core 3 in the Suns midfield, might have been the odd man out. Looks like he's found a real place under Hardwick already.
I also really liked, and he didn't have quite the numbers, but Nick Holman, I thought that he just utilized his strength really well in contests.
Kind of him doing that more on the outside and forward, whereas Rowell was able to do that inside, right on the ball. I almost wondered at first when you were talking up Holman so much if you were conflating him with Brandon Ellis, who, let's not forget, was a premiership player at Richmond. Ellis went off as the tactical sub in the fourth quarter. Didn't think, there was any you suck nature to that as well. Just let's get a little bit more behind the ball. Let's make sure this thing's really wrapped up. Oh yeah, we haven't really talked much about types of substitutions thus far,
but that is something we are tracking this year. We've pledged to do this before, and now it's happening. We have the injury sub, which happens when, you're not going to believe this, a player's injured.
Yeah, the injury or medical sub. I forget which one we officially call it.
We have the tactical sub, which is, just we're going to take out a forward for another defender. There's the you suck sub.
And I think we had one of those.
We did. Joel Amarty, unfortunately, who I really like, but played very poorly the other night.
Yeah, Logan McDonald was clearly ahead of him in the forward group, and Amarty just wasn't able to make his chances elsewhere for the Swans. And so they brought on Sam Wicks, who had a good impact pretty quickly there.
And then there's the Victory Cigar sub,
which we haven't had yet. I guess Ellis's could have been considered like a take the rest of the game off because. Yeah, but that's usually like, typically you're up big and you sub out one of your stars. And it's just like, let's just rest this guy and make sure that everyone gets in and have some fun. Yeah, victory cigar subs are rare, but they're notable. I think maybe we had one with Charlie Curnow last year. Yeah. It's kind of like that's one of those playing with your food type deals, I guess. I guess, yeah. By the way, the attendance at, I guess, what is now called People First Stadium because of the merger with Heritage Bank. Rudy Edsall made a great point, said that it sounds like the human fund, people first, the human fund, money for people, they all kind of just, it fits. A donation of 22,068 fans has been made in the AFL's name to People First Stadium. Yeah, that's the fourth highest attendance at the venue, and the highest attendance not involving Collingwood. It seemed like probably about a 50-50-ish crowd mix. Seemed like it. I just hope that we get crowds like this for Q Clash. That was good. That was definitely one of the positives of opening round was a good crowd at Gold Coast and a good crowd at GWS, as we'll get to. Other odds and ends to tie up on this game real quick. Not a lot of positives for Richmond here. I think they should play Hugo Ralphsmith. That's what I'm going to say every game, even if they win. But I did remember that Jacob Hopper plays for them, and he actually had 2 goals, 23 disposals, 13 contested possessions, and no, Tim Taranto didn't have a very good game, but Hopper did, and just that's a significant piece that they were without for, more than half the season last year? Yeah, I mean, and when I thought of all the pieces they were missing last year, the first one that came to mind was Josh Gibcus. Actually, Hopper played 16 games in 2023. Didn't feel like it, though. No, it did not. I mean, he had an Achilles tendon injury that was bothering him throughout the winter months and contributed to some of his lesser performances. But you're talking about Gibcus, finally came back from his hamstring injury and didn't look to be quite up to the task. He was up against Ben King a couple times and got outclassed there. Jack Lukosius outdid him too. Maybe still kind of getting back up to speed to be that good one-on-one defender that we saw glimpses of in his first year in 2022. If Richmond are to be going anywhere these next couple years, then continued help from Hopper in the middle and Gibcus in the back are going to be paramount necessities. Gibcus, along with Tyler Young, who very quickly last year earned that job as the deepest fullback. Oh, sorry, Tyler. GWS 18-6-114 defeated Collingwood 11-16-82. This was enjoyable. The Pies forced to travel. Oh boy, did they weep. Welcome to the showground. Watch out for the sheep. And then Collingwood, if it wasn't for the typo, would have also been a great banner. Yeah, honestly, it was still pretty good even with that. I still don't know how they messed that up, but... What do you mean, the hate us? Maybe it's just like their version of he hate me. Roses are red, Giants seem blue, the hate us, but we don't mind you. I mean, who doesn't enjoy the Giants? I mean, I think even Swans fans have to enjoy the Giants. I think Dogs fans have to enjoy them. The amount of trolling involved in this game, regardless of how the actual game went, was spectacular. Some of the promotional images, GWS with was Toby the main piece in there? Toby was eating a pie with with a little Collingwood flag on it. There was Mason Cox with a sheep as an American Australian Gothic. Yes. There was the headline on the newspaper. Yeah, something about that. All sorts of really, really good details. Just more great work from the Giants media team, led, of course, by Jacob Gaynor. That and having the actual petting zoo there, that was pretty great. The Mason Cox petting zoo, I think he got more touches in the petting zoo than he did in the game. What was the headline? Collingwood received funding for netball facility. Oh, yes, I remember that from the off season. But yes, excellent graphic. Just, you knew there was going to be a lot of trolling. You didn't expect Mason Cox to just kind of run through Giants stoppage practice before the game and almost get into a dust-up with Shane Mumford of all people. He was issued our favorite kind of notice by the AFL, the please explain. I think basically a please explain is give us a good enough reason not to fine you. He should have just responded, lol, or he's going to run through the stoppage practice.
For the funny!
I think just Mason Cox in general just can be described as for the funny.
Yeah, I think this was great. Kind of unfortunate that Mason didn't play well. Not unfortunate that Collingwood got beat pretty convincingly. I think just about all of us that aren't Collingwood fans definitely enjoy that.
Beaten convincingly in front of a big crowd, 5th highest for the venue, 21,235. Their highest home and away crowd that isn't a Sydney Derby. The only other one in the top 5 that wasn't Sydney before that was the prelim against the Dogs from 2016. That crowd also makes Scott Pendlebury the first VFL AFL player to play in front of a combined attendance of 20 million, which is what happens when you play 384 games for Collingwood these days.
Yeah, the Giants led this one by as much as 52. Don't let the final score fool you. Yeah, Geelong's season opening performance last year was way better. That was a game most of the way. This was not. It was a very un-Collingwood game.
Well, a lot of inaccuracy contributed to that. Lachie Schultz really shaky early on, I believe 3 pretty bad misses. Oh yeah, you want to take a look at the X score for this one, Ethan?
Oh yeah. I never gave earlier, but Brisbane won on X score 87.2 to 68.1. I mentioned that because I had said, their forwards kind of pissed it away, but also, credit Carlton for hitting some tougher shots, but Brisbane missed some really easy ones with, expected score in the high 4s, low 5s.
Meanwhile, expected score at the show round, Collingwood 92.8, Greater Western Sydney 74.1, which also is an indicator of, some tougher shots being converted by the Giants, some longer shots by their talls. Callum Brown is a forward and kicked 5. Jesse Hogan kicked 4, and Aaron Catman added 2 as well. So 11 combined goals for those 3 talls, and they can really kind of ride the hot hand in game between the 3 of those. I had said going into this game and at the start of the game, if Aaron Catman is continuing to emerge as a forward, then you can just have Hogan, be more of a roving mark. And then Hogan reminded us, wait, I can still kick goals. So they've got some flexibility there in terms of the talls. The number 11 also shows up in the stats for the Giants for another reason, in terms of another trio. 4 assists each for Toby Green and Stephen Canelio, and 3 for Academy graduate Harvey Thomas on debut. I know, Ethan, you said before this recording started that you didn't really notice Thomas. Maybe that's just because there are bigger names in there and Thomas is on the smaller side, 176 centimeters, I think. He kind of looks like baby out there, but doesn't play like it at all.
Yeah, he played well. Also, I noticed, Jacob Ware is just really wiry and could use some more muscle. I thought he was solid. I didn't think he did anything wrong, but
solid on the outside.
But it was just, what made this game so weird was, a lot of times Collingwood's midfield possession numbers are great, but they're way more efficient in both 50s. Look, last year they did get lucky more than a few times with opponents missing easy shots, but also you had Quainer and Moore with a bunch of intercepts, and then to avoid them, you ended up seeing teams take shots from tougher areas. This time, Collingwood's forwards were kind of wasteful between just set shot inaccuracy. They finished 11-16 for the game, and sometimes where they just couldn't get a mark in the forward 50.
I think through the first 3 quarters, they didn't have a single goal from marks, whereas the Giants already had 10. And marking was an issue on both sides of the oval. Collingwood's 1v1 defense was a letdown the entire game. One of the reasons that Hogan and Brown got as many goals as they did was because the Giants' talls were frequently left without a direct opponent to the forward half. I remember a time when Steele's sidebottom was looking like he was supposed to be guarding 2 Giants' talls at once. Sidebottom shouldn't be guarding a single Giant tall. That's not his assignment at all. And also defensively, when Collingwood was trying to move out, trying to rebound, they were just kicking long and high, kind of nondescriptly out of the defensive 50. They didn't have much direction going into the middle, and the Giants were set up really well behind the ball. That was one of the areas where Harry Himmelberg shone.
Harry!
A high volume game for Himmelberg, which he just kind of seems to have all the time. 24 disposals like it was nothing. His kind of launching of rebounds was solid, often going out to the outside for someone like Lockie Asher just quietly has become a very steady part of the Giants' kind of chain of movement. And then you have the productivity in the forward half. The 11 goals from the talls. How about 4 also from Binga, Brent Daniels? Happy 25th birthday to him.
Yeah, I thought he had a really nice game up front in addition to, I know you already mentioned Brown, you already mentioned Hogan, I believe.
I'm all three talls, yeah.
But yeah, Daniels was quietly very good, and he played better as the game went on. Brown made his impact early.
3 goals in the first quarter, and also I love his choice of goal song, El Sonidito.
Yeah, let's have the goal song discussion while we're at it. I know a decent amount of purists probably aren't fans of goal songs or like music, like at any time it's not, quarter break or halftime, but I think this is fine.
We're not purists. We're still relative newcomers to the game. And I think that can be the case for a lot of Giants fans as well. And you know what? Might allow for, better connection between fans and players at times. I don't mind it.
So I think for younger clubs, especially in New South Wales and Queensland, I think it's a really good thing to have.
Lean on Me is a weird choice, though, Toby.
Yeah, there are some weird choices, but I think it's fun, gives you a little bit of taste of personality for some of them. And even if some, they're picking a song that doesn't really fit with anything and they just kind of picked it for the funny.
For the funny!
It's just fun.
It's like on the rare occasion Lockie Neal scores for the Lions. I think he's got Punda replay.
Good. It just gives a little bit of personality and makes players distinct, which, when they're on a very, very large field, can be tough to do.
I mean, especially when you've got 36 of them out there on the field once. Am I correct about Lockie Neal? I think Punda Replay was his song for last year anyway. I think he's got a new one this year. I think he went toward Paul Kelly.
Yeah, I'm not bothered by it. I'm sure it would be weird if a club like Collingwood did it, but
not weirder. Blues doing it.
Or the Demons. Any of those three.
I feel it would just be weirder for the Blues.
Any of those, it would be weird. But yeah, I like it in, especially in New South Wales and Queensland, but for any of the non-Victorian clubs.
Yeah, like it.
I wouldn't mind it at Geelong, personally. I would think others would, but I'd be okay with it.
Do you think Brian Myers would have to pick some Argentinian song?
Ooh. Or, there's just some remix of the Messi, I'm gonna Messi. Just something like that.
We can get weird with this one.
Going back, fun question on baseball Barbacast, what would be the most grotesque, and that was the word used, walk-up music for a baseball player? And there were a few different answers given, just a clip from a podcast. Not even the intro to a podcast, just a random 10-second clip from a podcast.
I feel like Brandon McCarthy would do that.
Or the national anthem, because people would be really confused if they were supposed to stand each time.
Now, how about a national anthem that's not American and not of any other baseball playing country? Out of nowhere, just somebody plays, I don't know, the Montenegrin national anthem and it just makes no sense.
Yes, that would be excellent. And it would lead to a lot of good Balkan memes. I'm always in favor of Balkan memes.
Curse Balkan comments forever. But thinking back to the Collingwood defensive structure, I think you realize just even with Charlie Dean in there, great that he was able to finally get his AFL debut, you realize just how dependent the Pies have been on Jeremy Howe and Nathan Murphy to define their defensive structure. Kind of everything else built outward from them. Even Darcy Moore's role is dependent on those other two, and to the large part it's been Murphy. And without them kind of anchoring the defensive setup and just being steady backline veterans, Collingwood was really exposed on the back end, and you wonder why they conceded 11 goals to Talls. That's a real concern for them, especially when you're going up against another team with a good number of capable Talls this coming Friday. Logan McDonald might just have a lot of fun.
Joel Amartey bounce back game?
I'd be here for it.
I think that just about covers this game. Is there anything else to really...
Yeah, on the topic of defense, yes, Brody Mychek did get 3 goals, but those were not with Jack Buckley on him.
Yes, I wanted to talk about the 3 defenders that really stood out to me in this game. Normally, if you ask me which 3 Giants defenders, obviously Taylor's the first one, and then maybe Connor Iden.
And then Harry Himmelberg, probably?
Yeah, in this game, Himmelberg wasn't that noticeable to me. Iden was. I liked Iden's game a lot.
Oh, I
liked Taylor's game.
Yeah, Iden very strong, kind of picking up and providing strong kind of backline pressure on more of an outside job. But Buckley has emerged, I guess reemerged into one of the best one-on-one defenders in the competition alongside Sam Taylor. If you can assert yourself as a strong one-on-one with Taylor also in there, that's really impressive. And Buckley picked up right where he left off last year in doing a really good job on the most consistent goal kicker for Collingwood in the past 5 years.
Yeah, he was awesome.
And I'd also put Lockie Whitfield among the group of Giants defenders that you always know just because he gets the ball so much.
I mean, he was doing it in different spots, but it was a little bit Jack Sinclair-ish. I mean, Sinclair, I always think of as just like around the boundary, around the edge of 50.
Whitfield has, I think, got a fair bit more inside ability compared to Sinclair, whereas Hillenberg led the defensive setup and rebounding ahead of the ball when the Pies were still in their back half. Once they were forward, you really saw Whitfield take his leadership there. And that's been something that he's done for a while and is still plenty capable of. At age 29, feels like he's older for some reason. He'll be 30 in July. All right. So does that take us to award time?
Well, no, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, opening round. I mentioned it briefly. Say again, the quality of play outside of the first half of the first game was good.
And a lot of that can be chalked up to the weather conditions.
I think there was probably some trepidation, like not having another week. Is that going to hurt? And it largely didn't have much of an effect. I am really interested to see how the teams that played this week look next week.
Well, I'm really concerned for Richmond in particular for the shortest turnaround, 5 days before they've got to face the Blues. And they were probably holding out some players for the purpose of just keeping them healthy for round one, particularly Dusty.
I was trying to say, what are the teams that played this week going to look like against the teams that didn't? Are they going to be more ready? Are they going to look tired? What are we going to see out of that? So I think that'll be a fun thing to study.
Yeah.
So 4 different games where we'll get to analyze that.
Those being the Giants against North, the Suns hosting the Crows, the D's and Dogs, because that's a round one standard ever since their grand final meeting, and the final game of the round, Brisbane going out west to face Freo, which was a really fun one last year when they went out there. And you didn't actually watch that one until recently.
Yeah, I had these 4 games from the last few rounds of the season that I had never watched, and that was one of them, and I finally got them done.
And there was much rejoicing.
So this season is now officially underway. Now that I finally finished that, the 2023 season is officially over. I do want to steer our discussion back real quick to Brisbane and Carlton, because there was some talk, that's the sort of win that could set Carlton up, for a flag run. Look, that's a great comeback win, but it's one of those things that could end up a distant memory because it's round one
and might end up kind of moving larger when push comes to shove because that was when Doherty went down.
It is interesting. First off, Brisbane actually getting hit with injuries for once because they've been so injury-free the last couple of years. Again, sucks it happened to Coleman.
I mean, yeah, they've got Ashcroft recovering from his too, but it didn't slow him down on the field. This is going to be the most impactful injury they've had, I think, since at least 2021.
I don't have anything against them. I like the Lions, but it is funny to see Lions fans going like, oh my God, we could be 0-3. They go out to Freo, who not the best Freo team, but still got to go all the way to Perth. And then Holy Thursday, Maundy Thursday, is that the same thing?
Yes, it is. But
Easter things have a lot of different days. I call it, I don't know why you'd call a Thursday Monday. It's literally a different day of the week.
But yes, Holy Thursday against the Pies.
Yeah, so it's a tough start to the year for these guys. And, how much can you look at it as, it's round one, or do you look at it as man, we really shit the bed? It's a very different nature than that round one loss a couple years ago to the Swans. It was just like, oh shit, maybe the Swans are back. That was 2021, I think?
Sounds right.
What I distinctly remember about that was I remember sleeping through that,
just not thinking it would matter.
Or just doing something else. We didn't have the show at the time. And then I looked at the score and I saw, 125-94. Okay, Lions took care of business. And then it wasn't until many hours later that it was brought to my attention, oh no, Swans won this game.
Oh, well, that changes things.
I feel like just a normal round one stinker would be a lot easier to handle than a game where you probably feel like you should have won.
And lost one of your structurally most important players.
And there's one other I kind of forgot to mention. The way, the accuracy that GWS had and stuff kind of reminds me as well of Geelong's loss at GWS in round one a couple years ago, or more than a couple, back in 2020, where it's just holy fuck, these guys can't miss. Also, we're playing like crap. And it's just, it's easier to shake off a round one loss where you just look like shit.
I mean, it also helped that the Cats had like 3 months to get things right after.
Yeah, but that's my point remains. I think it's easier to just shake one off when you can just say, we just didn't look like ourselves at all. Let's go be better.
One thing that will make Lions fans feel a little better is watching one of the marking sequences.
Yes, this was one of those that I am trying to promote the crap out of. Just like, hey, why footy? This is why.
Yeah, and actually all 3 of the Mark of the Week nominees came from this same game, because earlier you had Matt Cottrell taking one over Ryan Lester. But in this one sequence here in the late third quarter, Lincoln McCarthy humiliated Nick Newman with a knee to the back mark, and then Joe Danaher toppled Lewis Young before immediately kicking a goal. Which of those between McCarthy and Danaher do you prefer? I think Danaher probably got the bigger reaction out of us as it happened live.
Yes, it got a bigger reaction because A, it was preceded by another, B, where it was on the field. But I will go with Danaher because, it was basically like a classic sitter. His knee was on Lewis Young's back, so I will go with that.
I think McCarthy was impressive with getting that extra elevation, but I'm also leaning toward Danaher.
Goal of the Week nominees, we've got Jacob Van Rooyen with the accidental Falcon to bicycle kick just below the knees.
It was hardly a kick.
Yeah,
and it was also technically really above the knees based on how his leg was positioned.
I mean, on his body it was below, but
yeah,
because he was kind of upside down. If it had hit off his foot, would have been even cooler. But
if it hit off his foot, it would have looked like it would have been maybe a double Falcon, which I would have thoroughly enjoyed.
For the funny!
But it was awesome. You had Dane Zorko soccering out of congestion from a throw-in just outside the goal square. And you had Toby Green's right-footed banana in front of Oleg Markov. Thoughts on this one?
Greens had the most intent behind it and the most build-up, and was the cleanest of them. But I can't get over just the zaniness of how Van Rooyen actually scored that, and how there was some great mark potential that he totally botched and still managed to score in a weird way. I think Van Rooyen kind of has to get it.
I got to go with Van Rooyen here. This doesn't take much thought for me. If you ask me what goal do I remember most from the round, that's the one. Easy pick.
We had some good main character nominees in this first round. For the sake of pure gameplay, you had Harry Mackay. For a combination of gameplay and off-oval circumstance, there was Connor Iden and his family, because Iden himself played quite well. And then we found out later his father and his brother had flown over from England to see him for the first time in a decade. There was actually a real quality interview there with him and his family and BT in the rooms, actual, serious, good Rolling Brian material. Going further toward the troll side, Mason Cox could easily have won main character in a lot of weeks just for everything that transpired leading up to that game. But instead of a current Collingwood ruck, our main character is a former Collingwood ruck. That's right. I really thought my pick of environmental activists throwing, what did I say, ketchup? Yeah, all of a sudden, Damien Hardwick was going to come true, but it's Brodie Grundy. He outplayed Max Gawn. Also, he got stung by a jellyfish earlier in the day. Yeah,
stung in the ear, which in Australia is known as a blue bottle jellyfish. And this is maybe the first time ever that Americans have a cooler name for something than Australians do, because we call it a Portuguese man-o-war.
Wait, that's what that is?
Yep.
Wait.
That's a very painful sting.
But yeah, wait. Is Brodie Grundy Dr. Man-o-war?
And now it only hurts when you touch it.
Touch.
That is a very deep SpongeBob cut, by the way.
Oh, and then speaking of Rolling Brian, after the game, Grundy totally bought into the bit, said he manifested it, added a wowee of his own. Brodie Grundy just owned this round. On and off the oval, Grundy just sopped up everything. Man, I did not realize that it was a man-o-war. Holy cow.
Yeah. Again, it's so funny because we have a cooler name for something for once.
Oh, we didn't have environmental activists going on the field, but a fan did get on the field. It was in Sydney. We had a streaker right as they were announcing the attendance, and at first I thought, oh wow, they're really liking that crowd number. Oh, nope, never mind, it's because we have a streaker.
I mean, was he really a streaker? Was he clothed? You can't be a streaker unless you take your clothes off.
I think he was unclothed.
Okay.
At least on the top, maybe on the bottom as well.
There is a difference, between just an intriguer and just a dumbass on the field. These are two different things.
I think that's going to wrap things up here. As a reminder, you can find me individually on social media at BenjaminHK01.
I am on Twitter at Castle Media. Brian Harambe is on Instagram at CatNameBrian.
And together, we are on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Americans Footy. Do not look for us on TikTok. We will never be there.